Okay, so if this stimulus doesn't work, it is the state's fault. The South Carolina Governor Mark Sanford, who's already rejecting some of this cash. Governor, what do you think of that?
Don't quite get it, but I'll wait and stay tuned to see what comes next with regard to what does or doesn't come to the states from Washington, D.C.
So what he seems to be saying, that if you don't take the dough, or longer term, if things don't turn around, don't blame us, that is the White House. Don't blame us, that is Congress. Blame those guys who rejected it or didn't do what we said they should do with it.
Well, we've put in for a waiver that would basically take 25% of the total. The total is gargantuan. It's $2.8 billion, which is about half of what we spend on a yearly basis in our budget in South Carolina. And we said, you know, in addition to spending, we ought to put some hay in the barn. That's what farmers do across the state on a yearly basis in the wintertime. It's what any prudent family does when they get some giant windfall. They don't go out and just spend it all. They actually work to pay down the mortgage, or to be ready for the kids' education, or to pay down credit card balances. That we ought to have a bit of both. And so, indeed, we've put in a waiver because we think in the long run it's best for our state from a financial standpoint. It puts us in the strongest position from the standpoint of being able to grow jobs over the long run. If you just go out and spend all this money right now, then come 24 months from now, we end up with a $1.2 billion hole in South Carolina that I think would be horribly disruptive to the economy, to taxpayers, and to the constituencies served by government.
But is it a tough sell to your constituents, Governor, because we're going to be talking to your counterpart in Texas, Rick Perry, who is of a similar mind, that the benefits, sometimes in this case, are outweighed by serious drawbacks here, and costly ones, longer term. But the residents just hear you're declining some dough, don't they? And they get upset.
Obviously, some people get upset, but I would say that the silent working majority out there who ultimately is responsible for sending these taxes to Washington that in part come back to us, or in this case, the ones whose kids will be responsible for the deficits that are now stacking up in Washington, what they're telling me is, look, having a financial house in order absolutely does matter to the economy and to the financial markets. And if Washington can't get it right, then we ought to at least do our part in South Carolina. Because if you take this full $2.8 billion and spend it all, as I said before, you end up with a $1.2 billion hole that we got to dig out of in 24 months. Those, for us, are very serious strings attached. And so what we've said is, let's take a middle ground. We can't control the program funding, that 75%, $2.1 billion that would still come to the state, but we can have an impact in the 25%, which is about $700 million. And we think that that money ought to be set aside to pay down debts, because we've gone debt crazy in this country. And a problem that was created by too much debt will not be solved at the end of the day with yet more debt, whether out of Washington, D.C. or stacked up here in South Carolina.
Real quickly, Governor, we look to be spending more debt now. There's talk of another stimulus. On a day and over days, we've gotten some signs, albeit tepid signs, of improvement, whether we're looking at retail sales, whether we're looking at Citigroup saying it's in better shape than people thought, Bank of America saying the same thing, GM saying we can hold off on getting emergency cash, maybe for a while. Mm-hmm. What if we are doing all of this stimulating and we're already stimulating? You know what I mean? What if Washington is just doubling down and paying down more for this sort of thing when we might not need it? What do you think?
I would say that we don't need what Washington is subscribing. I think we have much further to go with regard to harm that's been done to our economy based on a very significant buildup in debt. Debt grew at 3 times GDP, gross domestic product, over the last 15 years, and we still have some deleveraging still to go. So you pour enough money onto any fire, it's going to make the fire burn brighter. It's temporarily doing so. There's a longer run still here to go.
Governor, very good having you. Thanks for coming.
My pleasure. Take care. Yes, sir.
All right, well, still laying out the blame, but no plan. What Treasury Secretary Tim Geithner just said, that has Michelle Malkin apoplectic. And don't mess with Texas. The Texas governor has just told the president thanks, but no thanks to that stimulus cash. But he has another reason to refuse it. By the way, he's here, and he's only here.
The economy's been a little rough, man.
Brutal.
It's times like these that E-Trade can really help you replan your investments. Rise up.
Take these broken wings
Benny, please.
and learn to fly again. Take control with one of the most powerful investing machines there is at E-Trade.
We had 2 very bad colds. I typed in pregnancy.
Meditation, yoga, diet.
With WebMD, everything is in one place, from parenting to nutrition.
I don't need a million answers. I just want the good ones.
WebMD. Better information, better health.
Big business is bailed out and you're forced to foot the bill. Now key players speak out on the plan and the price tag.
You don't regret what you couldn't stop.